Hi, Howard. Not my thing.
Welcome back, stranger. Hope you had the same time. Is your band still working good?
So the green monster back there, right?
I'm sure they or something.
We rented a RV park.
Oh, yeah. Good morning.
Oh yeah, it was terrible. The wind was crazy.
That was an experience. Driving a 30-foot RV.
You only go 50 miles an hour, so you didn't go anywhere.
Yeah, we didn't go anywhere.
Page six.
And there's
Check that little.
Jeff.
There, you change the page.
You're back.
I am back.
I think you need to go into the paper.
You should.
By the way, I hope I didn't scare away Mr. Mason.
We had a pretty good game.
He seems to be a lovely man.
Yes. Being involved is all that.
Except for recommendations.
Hey, Mitchie.
Larry. See, your wife was one of the first right back.
Let's see.
It's me, it's not there.
Yeah. Oh well. All right. Well, good morning, everybody. We shall begin on page 6 with Berkot Shachar. Let us please rise for morning blessings. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan us akvivin nalachim ben yom u'ben laila. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shasani betzalmo. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shasani Yisrael. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shasani ben chorin. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam pokeach ivrim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam abish harumim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam atir asurim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam zokef kefufim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam rocha haaretz al hamayim. Baruch atah Adonai melech haolam shasali kor tzorki. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamechem etzedei gaver. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam ozir Yisrael b'gvura. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam ozir Yisrael b'tifara. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hanoten la'ev koach. Baruch atah Adonai melech Hutenenu hayamu v'chol yom lachein ul hesed rachamim beinecha uvenei koroenu v'timul hasadim tovim. Baruch atah Adonai gomel chasadim tovim le'amo Yisrael. Yehi ratzon mefanecha Adonai v'le'avatim. Hashreinu matav chalkeinu umanam goraleinu mafahiru v'shateinu. Hashreinu she'anaknu mashkimu ma'arivim erev avoker ve'omrim pa'amayim v'chol yom. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai echad. Baruch Shem Kavod. Kadesh et shimcha magdushay shemecha v'kadesh et shimcha lomecha uvishuatcha tarmidak b'yakaranenu. Baruch atah Adonai mekadesh et shimcha barabim. Atah Adonai Eloheinu mishmar malay zeh. יהי רצון מלפניך אדוני אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו שתיתן חלקנו בתורתך ונהיה מתלמידיו של אהרון הכהן אוהב שלום רודף שלום אוהב בריות ומקורבן לתורה. Kaddish to Rabbanan, page 13 for mourners and those observing Yartzeit. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah ve'almad divra kiruteh ve'amlik malchuteh v'chayechon u'vyamechon u'v'chayeh dechol beit Yisrael ba'agala u'vizman kari ve'imru amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mevorach le'alam ol'olmei almaya yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yithadar v'yit'aleh v'yithalal shemei kudusha b'richu Le'elam min kol berchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechamata da'amiran be'alma ve'imru amen. Al Yisrael ve'al Rabbanan ve'al Talmidechon ve'al kol Talmidei Talmidechon ve'al kol man da'askim be'oraita di ve'atra hadein v'di b'kol atar v'atar yehei lachon uchon shlama rabba hina v'chiz davarakamin v'chayin arichin unzona revicha for kanami kodam avuhon de vishmaya ve'imru amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya ve'chaim tovim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imru amen. Osei shalom imromav hu barachamav ya'asei shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imru amen. Mizmor asher hanukana b'levi hiramim kakilatani v'lo. Hafakta miskin melechole betakta saki v'razreni simcha lemag zevolo yidom ronai Elohai leolam odecha. Mourner's Kaddish, page 15. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah ve'almad divra kiruteh ve'amlik malchuteh v'chayechon u'vyamechon u'v'chayeh dechol beit Yisrael ba'agala u'vizman kari ve'imru amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mivorach le'alam ol'mei almaya Yitparach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yithadar v'yit'aleh v'yithalal shemei kudusha b'richu le'elam min kol berchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechamata da'amiran be'alma ve'imru amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya v'chaim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imru amen. Osei shalom imromav hu ya'asei shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imru amen. Baruch she'amar ve'haya ha'olam baruch hu b'rotzev rishit v'nu yosef baruch ha'im baruch atzar Adonai melech haolam ha'el ha'varach v'fi amo b'yishmar Yachid ke ha'olamim melech v'shabachim v'rei shemo ha'gadol baruch atah Adonai melech v'hulal b'tishbachos Od Adonai ki mishmar Ki kol Elohei ha'amim aleim v'Adonai shemayim hasa Od v'rad v'fanav Adonai ki tov ki l'olam hastam Romeimu Adonai Eloheinu ve'ishtachavu l'har kodsho ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu v'hu rachum yakaper b'om v'lo yashchit v'hir bala hashiv v'pol kodam atzot Adonai tziva'od asher moteach bach Adonai Hoshia HaMelech Yaneinu ve'yom koreinu Hoshia et amecha u'varach melatecha Va'ani b'chastecha b'takti yageli v'shuatecha ashira la'Adonai ki gamal alai Mizmor letoda harinu kol haaretz yibior v'simcha be'el כי טוב אדוני לעולם חסדו ועד דור ודור אמונתו. יהי כבוד אדוני לעולם ישמח במעשיו, יהי שם אדון רגעתו ולעולם יזרח שם השם ואום ושם. והוא רחום יקבר בו ולא ישחית, והרבה להשיב אפו ולרחם למתו. אדוני הושיע מלך עינינו ויום קוראנו. אשרי יושבי ביתך עוד יהללוך סלה. אשם שכח לו אשם שאדוני אלוהיו תהילה לדוד. תהילת אדוני ידבר פיו ורק בשר שם קודשו לעולם ועד, ואנחנו נברך ימי עתה ועד עולם. הללויה, 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 נפשי אדוני. אל תגבור. אדוני שומר את גרים יתום ואלמנה יתד ודרם שיעבד ימלוך אדוני לעולם מלכי ציון לדור ודור. הללויה, הללויה, כי טוב זו אלוהינו כי נמנה ותהילה בנו ירושלים אדוני נשי יצורך נס. שבת ירושלים אדוני. מגיד רב יעקב וקו משפטיו לישראל לא עשה כן לכל גוי ומשפטים רדום. הללויה, 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 אדוני מן השמיים, הללויה ברמים, הללויה. יהללו את שם אדוני כי נשגב שמו לבדו, הודו על ארץ ושמיים. וירם קרן לעמו תהילה לכל חסידיו, לבני ישראל עם קרובו. הללויה, הללויה, שיר אדוני שיר חדש. לאסור מלכיכם בזיקים ונפרדכם ברבלי ברזל, לעשות כל מה שכתוב והדר לכל חסידיו. הללויה, הללויה, הללויה בקודשו, הללויה ברכיוזו, הללויה בקודשיו, הללויה קרוב כולו, הללויה בתג השופר, הללויה בנבן הכינור, הללויה בתוף ומחול, הללויה בנים ויוגיו, הללויה בצלצלי שמע, הללויה בצלצלי תרועה, כל אנשי מטה, הללויה, הללויה, כל אנשי מטה, הללויה, הללויה. ברוך אדוני לעולם אמן ואמן. ברוך אדוני שכן ירושלים, הללויה. ברוך אדוני אלוהים אלוהי ישראל עושה נפלאות לבדו, ברוך שם כבודו לעולם וימלא כבודו את כל הארץ, אמן ואמן. ויברך דוד אדוני דוד ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהי ישראל אמן. אתה הוא אדוני האלוהים אשר בחרתם באברהם, ראותו מרכזים ותת שמו אברהם, ומצאת לבבון המה לפניך, וחרות עם המוריתי את הארץ. והים בקצה לפניהם, ויעברו בתוך ביבשה, ואת רודפיהם ישלחת במשאלות, כמו אבן במים עזים. ויוש אדוני ביום ההוא את ישראל במצרים, וירא ישראל במצרים לא שפת הים. וירא ישראל אדוני אשר עשה אדוני במצרים, וירא את אדוני, ויאמינו באדוני ובמשה עבדו. אז יושב משה ובני ישראל את השירה הזאת לאדוני, Adonai Imloch le'olam vahed, Adonai Imloch le'olam vahed. Ki la'Adonai hamlucha mishal b'goyim v'alamoshim, Bahar Tzion each border Esav, v'haitzal Adonai hamlucha, v'haya Adonai lemelech al kol haaretz. Bayom hahu yeh Adonai echad u'shemo echad. Yishtabach shimcha la'ad malkeinu ha'el lemelech Berachot v'orot me'ata ve'olam baruch ata Adonai El melech gadol b'tishbachot el ha'odaot Adonai niflaot habach b'sher zimra Melech el checha olamim Yidgedal b'ged Hashem he'rabah Ve'omad divrei kedutei ve'amlik malchutei b'chayechon v'mechon v'chaydecho beit Yisrael Bagala uvisman kari ve'imru Amen Yeheshem le'rabah m'vorach le'olam le'almaya Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'naseh v'yihadar v'yinaleh v'yitalal shemei kedusha V'yichun le'el amin kol b'rakata v'shirata Tush b'kata v'nechamata da'amiran be'alma ve'imru Amen Barechu et Adonai ha'mevorach Baruch Adonai ha'mevorach le'olam va'ed Baruch atah Adonai melech haolam esurei koshech osei shalom u'redet hakol Ha'me'er la'aretz Soviet, sorry. Tit barak ha'anu shemach ma'aseh decha Kulam ahuvim, kulam erohim, kulam giborim, vekulam osim b'ma v'ratzon kona, vekulam potkim yapim dushav Torah, v'shira v'zimram v'arachim u'shavachim u'farim u'maritzim u'makdishim u'mamlikim, et shem ha'el ha'melech ha'gadol ha'gibor v'hanora kadosh hu, vekulam ekolim aleichem omot shemayim ze mizeh, v'nonim reshut ze lazen ha'kish v'nachat ruach, V'safa v'rura min ha'kadosha Kulam kechadonim ve'omrim be'yirah Kadosh, kadosh, kadosh Adonai tzivaot melech kol haaretz kevoto Ve'ofanim v'chayot ha'kodesh Pirash kado min ha'asim li'umat serafim Ve'humata mishabkim ve'omrim Baruch kever Adonai mimkomo la'el Baruch nimo itenu Reshit ka'amor le'etzim gilem gilom chazdo Or chadash etzion tahir v'nizgechu l'nameira le'oro Baruch atah Adonai yotzer ha'morot Aharabav tanu Adonai Eloheinu chem la'gidol la'avot l'aleinu Avinu malkeinu ba'avor avotenu shabachtu v'cha V'harininu b'toratecha v'znomotecha v'harininu Vahavienu l'shalom me'arba kanfot ha'aretz v'tolichenu k'momer l'ertzenu ki yapu al yeshuot ata uvanu v'kartam k'lom v'lashom v'karavtanu l'shim kagros le'be'emet l'hodot lecha u'yachedcha be'ahava Baruch atah Adonai habocher be'amo Yisrael be'ahava Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad V'hafshat Adonai Elecha V'chol lav kol moshecha v'me'adecha V'layim shemot Yisot ha'yesher Vayomer. Adonai Elohechem emet v'etzi v'nakom b'chem. Ledor vador hu kamishmo kayam v'kiso nachon malchuto v'emanato la'ad kayamet v'chaim ad Rosh Hanim ve'alas emet v'nachot. Emet shatahu Adonai Eloheinu v'Elohei avotenu malkeinu melech avotenu go'aleinu go'el avotenu yatrinu to Yeshuatenu horim atzilenu me'olam shemecha ein Elohim zulatecha Ezrat avotenu atahu me'olam Ador b'lemeshon Tehilot Le'On Baruchu Vorach Moshe U'Bnei Yisrael Echadishu Rabbi Simcha Rabba Ve'amru Chulam Micha Mocha Ba'elim Adonai Micha Mocha Adonai B'Kodesh Nora Tehilot Osei Feleh Shira Kadasha Shibeku Ge'ulim L'Shem Kal Safat Hayam Yachad Kulam Hodu V'him Lechu Ve'amru Adonai Yimlok Le'olam Va'ed Suri Yisrael Kuma Be'ezra Yisrael U'Ptekin Mecha Yehuda V'Yisrael Go Aleinu Adonai Tzivot Shemo Kadosh Yisrael Baruch Atah Adonai Ga'al Yisrael
36 feet.
Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Elohei Avotenu Elohei Abraham Elohei Yitzhak Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah Elohei Rivka Elohei Rachel Elohei Leah Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor V'Hanora El Elyon Gomel Chasadim Tovim V'Konei HaKol V'Zoker Chazdei Avot Mevigo El Livnei V'Nechem L'Ma'an Shemo Be'ahava Melech Ozer Ufoken Moshe U'Magen Baruch Atah Adonai Magen Abraham Ufoket Sarah Atah Gibor Le'olam Adonai Mechayim Itim Atah Rav Lehoshia Mashiv HaRuach U'Morid HaGashem Mechakel Chaim B'Chesed Mechayim Itim B'Rachamim Rabim Shomek Noflim V'Rafeh Cholim V'Mater Asurim U'Makayim Emunato Shnei Afar Micha Mocha Ba'al Givurot U'Mido Melach Melech Me'mid U'Makayim Atzmiach Yeshua V'Ne'eman Talach Chayot Meitim Baruch Atah Adonai Mechayei HaMeitim Nekadesh Shemcha Ba'olam Keshem Shemakdishim Oto B'Shmei Marom Kagatu V'Yed Nevi'echa V'Kara Ze'el Ze'Ve'amar Kadosh 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 Adonai Tzivaot Melech Kol Haaretz Kevodo Le'umatam Baruch Yomeru Baruch Kevod Adonai Mimkomo U'B'divrei Kodesh Kakatuv Le'mor Yimloch Adonai Le'olam Elochai Tzion Ledor Vador Hallelujah Ledor Vador Nagigud Lechel Netzach Netzachim Kedushat Chanakdish V'Shivchacha Eloheinu Mipilonu Shle'olam Va'ed Ki Melech Gadol V'Kadosh Ata Baruch Atah Adonai Ha'el HaKadosh יתגדל ויגרש שמי רבה, בעלמד יברק ירוצה וימליך מלכותי וחייכון ומייכון וחי לכל בית ישראל בעגלה ובזמן קריב ואמרו אמן יהי שמי רבה מבורך לעולם ומעלמיה יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר וינעשה ויהדר וינעלה ויתהלל שמי לקדושה בריחו לעילם מן כל ברכתה ושירתה תושבחתה ונחמתה דאמירן בעלמה ואמרו אמן אשרי יושבי ביתך עוד יהללוך הסלע ובקדוש בשמי אלוהיו תהילה לדוד ממך אלוהי המלך רשם עליו ואבק כל מלוכה הדר כבוד הודך כבוד מלכותך יאמר עיני כל אליך יסבר תהילת אדוני בפיו יברך בשר שם קודשו לעולם ועד ואנחנו נברך יה מעתה ועד עולם הללויה ננצח Oh, you're right. Yeah. Well, let's see. Only Hillel me so we struggle to change him zot lilam Zika got select lilam ויפתח ויראה שמך כי לא עזרת דשך אדוני אדוני חפץ למען צדקו יגדיל תורה ויאדיר יתגדל ויגדל שמי רבה בעלמד יברח ירצה וימליך מלכותי בחייכון ומייכון וחי לכל בית ישראל בעגלה ובזמן קריב ואמרו אמן יהי שמי רבה מבורך לעולם ומעלמיה יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר וינעשה ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי לקדושה בריחו לעילם מן כל ברכתה ושירתה תושבחתה ונחמתה דאמירן בעלמה ואמרו Amen. Titkabat lo tehonu vo tehonu kol Yisrael kodam avonu v'shemaya v'imru. Amen. Yehi shalom min shemaya v'chaim alinavei kol Yisrael v'imru. Amen. O say shalom imru mafuya. Say shalom alinavei kol Yisrael v'imru. Amen. Let us pause for a moment. We do have an extra rod this morning. Male rachamim shochen baromim Am semenu chanechona tachat kanfei hashkina Malot kedoshim torim kezora hareki amasirim Lenishmat hena bena bachana lea v'moshe Shehalcha le'olama Began heden temenu chata Hanabah rachamim hasireha v'setek nefei le'olamim Utzoror bitzoror chachim enishmata Adonai hu nachalata V'tanuach v'shalom mishkava V'nomar Amen Aleinu l'shabeach v'donai kol ha'teik v'sabich Schöne Tische, mein Weg. Auch kein Nick will der Chalo kein, will ihm noch hier ran. ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך כל הארץ ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו אחד. Mourner's Kaddish. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah. Ve'almad divra kirutei ve'amlik malchutei. B'chayechon u'yemechon u'v'chayei dechol beit Yisrael. Ba'agala u'vizman kariv ve'imru amen. Yehi shmei Rabbah mevorach le'alam u'lamei olmaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh. V'yithadar v'yit'aleh v'yit'alal shemei dekudesha b'richu. Ve'la min kol birchata v'shirata. Tush b'chata v'nechamata da'amiran be'alma ve'imru amen. Yehi shlama Rabbah min shemaya. V'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imru amen. Osei shalom evromav. Hu yaseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imru amen. Yom Yom Shishi b'Shabbat Shabbat. Adonai Melech Lavesh Adonai Yavita Zara Tzon B'Tzimata. Migalot Mayim Rabbi Madirim. Erotecha nenu me'od levecha nava kodesh Adonai lehorek yamim. Mourner's Kaddish. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah. Ve'almad divra kirutei ve'amlik malchutei. V'chayechon u'v'yemechon u'v'chayei dechol beit Yisrael. Ba'agala u'vizman kariv ve'imru amen. Yehi shmei Rabbah mevorach le'alam u'lamei olmaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh. V'yithadar v'yit'aleh v'yit'alal shemei dekudesha b'richu. Ve'la min kol birchata v'shirata. Tush b'chata v'nechamata da'amiran be'alma ve'imru amen. Yehi shlama Rabbah min shemaya. V'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imru amen. Osei shalom b'mromav. Hu yaseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imru amen.
Good morning, everybody. So I have very good news for you. Yesterday, I told Rabbi Hudson that I was going to do all of Masechet Gittin from the Mishnah, because that's the one I basically know by heart. But I actually chickened out. No, I actually had a turn of conscience, and I decided to learn something that I really have never learned before entirely, which is called Masechet Pesachim from the Mishnah. And I took 2 or 3 Mishnayot that I thought were very interesting to study today. One of first of all, one I owe to Jeff Zucker, who a couple of years ago was asking me about Pesach Sheni. You remember that, Jeff?
Vaguely.
Vaguely, okay. And actually didn't know anything about Pesach Sheni. I don't think there's much to know about Pesach Sheni, but you got me thinking, and actually I have some answers today. After, 10 years?
Something like
okay.
that, yeah.
And then my other thing is the charoset, right? Why do we even have charoset on the table? It seems to be there as a symbol, but we don't really perform an actual mitzvah with the charoset. There's no prescription for us to perform a mitzvah specifically with the charoset. And it is mentioned in the Mishnah, by the way. So we know that maybe even at the times of the first temple, they were already doing charoset in some sort of way. We know that certainly for the second temple, charoset was in full force. But we do not know exactly, except for the urban myths of why we eat charoset, we don't know where it came from or why we have it. So that's what we're going to do today. I think it's actually important. And we're going to look at some of the opinions of the commentators surrounding these two things. So first let's start with the Torah. Sefer B'midbar, דבר אל בני ישראל לאמור איש איש כי יהיה טמא לנפש ובדרך רחוקה לכם או לילותיכם ויעשה פסח לאדוני בחודש שני ב14 יום בין 40 יעשו אותו על מצות ומרורים יאכלו. So we know that a person, according to the Torah, a person who cannot observe, by the way, this is referring not if you couldn't attend the Seder, okay? This is referring to you not being able to actually bring a paschal offering to the temple. So this is the context. It's not when you skip the Seder. It's not when you're not able to clean your house. This is entirely about the observance of the offering at the temple in Yerushalayim. So what happens? Do you have to observe or not the Mishnah? And it's in the 14th of Iyar, right? Exactly a month later. So here's what the Mishnah says. So that's a very important question. What does it mean to be far away, right? Does it mean that you are still in Israel, but you're not at the temple? Does it mean that you are in Rome? Does it mean that you are in Canada? What does far away mean? Because far away is a very general term. So here's the answer. Mida Modi'in lachutz, right? From the city of Modi'in, If you've been to Israel lately, Modi'in is right in between Jerusalem and Tel Aviv. So you are in Modi'in and further away, that means that you are far away and you were not able to bring the Paschal offering. But that's only one opinion, right? Let's go to the English. Anywhere from the city of Modin and beyond, and from anywhere located an equal distance from Jerusalem and beyond, in every direction. This is the statement of Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Eliezer says, from the threshold of the temple, courtyard, and beyond is considered a distant journey. Therefore, anyone located outside the courtyard at the time that the Paschal lamb is slaughtered is exempt from observing the first Pesach. Rabbi Yossi said to him, therefore, the word is dotted over the letter Hey in the word Rechoka to say that the meaning of the word should be qualified, meaning it's really far, right? I mean, it's not really far, it's a very subjective thing, right? What is the distance from where, okay? It should be understood that it's not because he's really distant, rather it includes anyone located from the threshold of the temple, courtyard, and beyond. So that's the distance. Now, let's see, I found that also an interesting explanation by Stephen Garfinkel. In other words, the second Pesach account, the Torah, shows a preference for the acceptance and understanding of human reality over and above the preference and pristine performance of ritual duties. That means, look, if you were in Modin, you're not so far away from the temple. You can definitely try to get there. But I think, you know, the whole intention of this endeavor of Pesach Sheni is to really understand people that really could not get there for a particular reason. They just tried and couldn't be there, even if they were in the city themselves, right? How many times does that happen to us, right? We really want to go somewhere. Let's make it less mundane. We really want to come to the synagogue. We really want to come to pray, and we may be 3 blocks away. But it's really not so much about the distance. It's really about the place where you find yourself spiritually, right? Maybe, like the Torah says, you were not pure and you couldn't bring the sacrifice, even if you were 2 blocks away. Maybe there's something happening in your life. So I think this is a very interesting explanation, right? The impetus of the Torah here is not entirely ritual, but also very spiritual. And that's very unusual. That's a very unusual understanding of the Torah text, which is usually very much about the ritual qualifications to do the sacrifices that were prescribed. Okay, now let's turn to page 3, and I want to see, just want to check, I mean, for all of us to know, if there's any biblical precedent for observing Pesach Sheni, because in the entire Torah there is no precedent for Pesach Sheni. It is just mentioned, right? We know that the children of Israel observed Pesach the first time a year after they left Egypt. But there is no mention of anybody in the Torah ever observing Pesach Sheni. So, lo and behold, there is an example in the book of Chronicles. Hezekiah sent word to all Israel and Judah. He also wrote letters to Ephraim and Manasseh to come to the house of the Lord in Jerusalem to keep the Passover for the Lord God of Israel. The king and his officers and the congregation in Jerusalem had agreed to keep the Passover in the 2nd month, for at the time they were unable to keep it, for not enough priests had sanctified themselves, nor had the people assembled in Jerusalem. There was a shortage of labor force. I mean, this is actually very interesting. This is what's happening in our country right now. They were not able to come and bring the offering in the 1st month. There weren't enough priests. So this was not even about the people being far away. There was just no way to handle the sacrifices. This is an incredible reality, right? So the term derech rechoka, right, really means not necessarily you are 5 or 10 or 15 kilometers away. It's a very subjective distance, so it's a very interesting thing. So the king and the whole congregation of Israel thought it proper, and they allowed it to happen. Okay, so that's about Pesach Sheni. By the way, just in conclusion, if you don't have a chance to participate in the Seder, it doesn't mean you have to have a Seder on Pesach Sheni. Look, if you're going to miss the Seder, you shouldn't miss the Seder. But if you're going to miss the Seder and you want to have a makeup Seder, okay, maybe Pesach Sheni is a nice time to have a Seder, but it really doesn't mean that much, right? Some people today, in modernity, especially very, very observant people, eat matzah, shmura matzah during Pesach Sheni, but that's about all they do, okay? And unfortunately, since there is no temple, it is impossible to really fulfill this mitzvah. By the way, the stories when I was growing up of rabbis going to the Soviet Union to help the refuseniks, or even rabbinical students. I have some of my teachers who went as rabbinical students who found themselves, you know, someplace in Moscow or Kiev, that was then Russia, and that they really could not observe Pesach because they didn't want to give out this vibe, that they were super Jewish. And so many of them said that they found ways to observe it later, and they ended up observing it on Pesach Sheni. It seemed to be a good compromise, but the truth is that it's really not a binding compromise. So that's an important explanation. Okay, let's go to the second issue here, the one about haroset. Okay, aviyu lefanav. So you bring before him all of these vegetables and all these things. Metadel vechazeret at shemagia leparperet apat. Right? You start dipping your. This is talking about the order of the seder a little bit. What happens? How do they serve the food? So they bring you vegetables and you start dipping the vegetables in salt water. Some people actually dipped it in vinegar. And if you've been, there's some seder where people still use vinegar for karpas, right? And you start, eating all of these little hors d'oeuvres until you reach the point of the bread. Now, what's the point in only eating vegetables with salt water until you reach the time of hamotzi? By the way, you not only have to eat one potato during karpas. You can go big or go home and eat, a pound of potatoes, because they don't require a motzi. They require, borei priyadama, which is a different bracha. So you can knock yourself out eating karpas until the time of hamotzi comes. Now, what happens right before we reach the time of eating the matzah? Right? You eat it says here, right? Afal pishein charoset mitzvah. Right? You eat Rabbi Eliezer Rabbi. Okay, let me read the English. It's going to be easier because it's articulated grammatically. He dips the chazeret into water or vinegar to taste some food. Remember, chazeret is lettuce, right? Or again, any of those spring vegetables. Before he reaches the dessert of the bread. Then the bitter herbs, which were eaten after the matzah, they brought before him matzah and chazeret and charoset, and at least 2 cooked dishes in honor of the festival. The Tana, meaning the rabbis, comment that this was a practice, although eating charoset is not a mitzvah, but merely a custom. And here comes the big discrepancy. Rabbi Eliezer ben Tzadok says, actually it is a mitzvah to eat charoset. So we have one rabbinic opinion that says that eating charoset is a mitzvah. So if eating charoset is a mitzvah, how come we don't perform a bracha when we eat charoset? Right? By the way, I personally do not like charoset. I never eat it. I don't try it. Right? And because there's no mitzvah, because there's no bracha associated with it, I actually get away with it. So it's actually pretty good for me. But anyway, and in the period when the temple stood and they offered the Paschal lamb, they brought before him the body of the Paschal lamb. Meaning, they brought the charoset, they ate the charoset, they dipped it, whatever they did. Then they brought the Paschal offering, they ate it, but no bracha was recited over the charoset. Here comes another interesting Mishnah. Rabbi Eliezer Rabbi Tzadok Omer, mitzvah, right? Rabbi Eliezer Rabbi Tzadok says, it is a mitzvah. We now know that. Okay? My mitzvah. Look at what the Mishnah says. My mitzvah. What do you mean a mitzvah? Right? This is new to us. Rabbi Levi Omer, zecher letapuach. It is in remembrance of the apples. Now, you know the recipe for. Who can tell me the recipe for charoset quickly? Come on, Jeff.
I have absolutely no idea.
You've been peeling apples the entire week. So what is it? Apple nuts, wine. Some people put raisins in it, maybe, right? What else? Cinnamon. Cinnamon is very important. You're actually supposed to put some sort of like spices on the charoset. We're going to see why. Okay. Now, what is this business about the apple, right? Rabbi Levi says it is in remembrance of the apple, as apple is one of the ingredients of charoset. The verse states, "Who is this who comes up from the wilderness, reclining upon her beloved under the apple tree? I awakened you." That's from the Song of Songs. Now, which is an allusion to the Jewish people leaving Egypt. Let me just ask you a question. If this translation of the Mishnah that we have didn't translate that, or if I wouldn't have read the commentary, I would have never found out that this actually comes from Shir HaShirim. What does Shir HaShirim have to do with this? Not much, except that, when do we read Shir HaShirim? No? Well, not on Friday, but on Pesach. Right? We read Shir HaShirim on Pesach. Right? The Song of Songs is read on Passover. Why is the Song of Songs read on Passover? No. What is the Song of Songs about? Shir HaShirim? What is it about? Huh?
Sex.
Yes. And what does sex have to do with Pesach and spring?
Beats me.
Fertility.
Oh, okay.
Right? So all of these things have the connection of the renewal of the earth. Look, in Mexico we have an expression, I am going to translate into English It's not going to make sense, but I'm going to try. It is like a donkey in the spring, right? Meaning a donkey in the spring is like, just looking for somebody to mate with. Because it's a spring. All of these animals are looking for mates, right? This is human condition. In the spring, not human condition, animal condition, everybody's looking for a mate. So it's in honor of the apple that hung over the trees, where the children of Israel reclined, right, as they were leaving Egypt. Now, this is a far-fetched interpretation of the verse. To do what? Mate. Why? Because now they were free. Now nobody was killing the children. Now nobody was threatening them. So it's in honor of that apple. Now, you can always be surprised with this, right? Because as you're eating the charoset, you never in your life thought that this is what you're putting in your mouth. Okay. But here comes another explanation. And Rabbi Yochanan says the charoset is in remembrance of the mortar used by the Jews for their slave labor in Egypt. That's the more amicable explanation that we actually explain to our children every year. Abaye said, therefore, to fulfill both opinions, one was prepared tart and one was prepared thick. One was prepared tart in remembrance of the apple, and one was prepared thick in remembrance of the mortar. Did you ever knew that Mishnah existed? It's an amazing Mishnah, right? Because now you know not only why we eat it, but now you know why it has apples in it. Because it was really mortar. Why do we put the apples in it? What do apples have to do with mortar? I mean, that's a very important question. Okay. And then here comes something else. This is from the Talmud, okay? It was taught in a Baraita, it's more about the same preparation of the charoset, okay? It was taught in a Baraita in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Yochanan. The spices used in the charoset are in remembrance of the hay that our forefathers used for building in Egypt, right? Tanya Kavate de Rabbi Yochanan, Tavlin Zecher Leteven, right? These spices were in remembrance of the hay. It's a beautiful statement in Talmud. Charoset Zecher Latit, right? Charoset is a remembrance of mortar. The word tit in Hebrew, tet means mortar, right? So that's the opinion of the Talmud. And then it says, Amar Rabbi Eliezer Rabbi Tzadok, Kach hayu ombrim, Tagrei Charach Yerushalayim. This is what the people that own small stores in Jerusalem, like small shops, used to say. Bo utlu lachem tablin lemitzvah. The small shopkeepers in Jerusalem would say as follows: come and take spices for yourselves for the mitzvah. So the Talmud is telling us that people in Jerusalem used to sell spices to put in the charoset to beautify the mitzvah. So they believed it was a mitzvah. That's why we put cinnamon in it. And if you don't put cinnamon in it, like I suggest you go back home. Okay, very good. Okay, that's the reason I don't eat charoset. I don't like cinnamon. So that's the problem. So that's actually an incredible take on this. Now, I just want to show you something else, which I think is actually remarkable. By the way, the Rambam, Maimonides, has become one of my big heroes lately. I mean, he was always my hero. Don't get me wrong. The Rambam should be every little Jewish boy's hero or girl's hero. But the Rambam is amazing. He comes up with things, like if you were here last Shabbat or when I gave my tish, you heard me explain that the Rambam really was completely opposed to having 3 matzot at the Pesach Seder. He really thought it was not only not allowed, it was the wrong way of understanding that mitzvah. Because he believed, for example, that if the 3 matzot is so that you can break one, so that you can still have 2 whole ones to perform the mitzvah of lechem mishne, meaning the bread that is additional on Shabbat and holidays, you have 2 whole ones. It says it makes no sense that if we do only 2 on Shabbat, on Pesach, when we eat lechem oni, right, poor bread, we have 3. If we should be feeling like we were slaves, we shouldn't have 3. And then we could still do lechem mishne with the one that's broken in half. So this makes absolutely no sense. So the Rambam is very rational and very good. Now the problem with the Rambam is that sometimes he comments something in his commentary on the Torah, and then by the time he gets to the Mishnah Torah, he had changed his mind. Which is, by the way, an amazing quality of the Rambam. All the rabbis, and this is a very important rabbinic trait, stick by what they say no matter if they're proven wrong by 1,000 people. Right, which is not good. The Rambam changed his mind. By the way, just anecdotally, and I promise you I won't take more than another 5 minutes, the Rambam anecdotally, he actually didn't believe the Mashiach was going to be a person. Right? If you look at the Mishnah Torah of his Yad Chazakah, it says, Al talei al datcha shemelech HaMashiach hu ish. Do not think that the King Messiah is a person. The exiliarch in Babylon sent him a letter to Spain, if you do not retract what you wrote, we're going to excommunicate, we're going to kick you out of the faith. We're going to ostracize you. So the Rambam wrote a whole letter called Igeret Chiyat Meitim, the letter of the resurrection of the dead, where he actually said, oh, no, I believe everybody's coming back to life and the Messiah is going to just walk through Jerusalem. Like, it was almost like ridiculizing, right? What they had made him apologize. But some people consider it a change of mind. So he changed his mind. Let's turn to the last page. Well, no, page, one before last, where it says Rabbi Soloveitchik explanation. For those of you who do not know who Rabbi Soloveitchik was the founder of Yeshiva University. Rabbi Soloveitchik is, I believe, one of the most prolific Orthodox authors in the United States. And by the way, within his orthodoxy, he was a very progressive man and an incredibly intellectually motivated thinker. So let's see what he explained. Okay, Rabbi Soloveitchik explains the conceptual basis for the Rambam's change. In the commentary to the Mishnah, the Rambam believed that Rabbi Eliezer ben Tzadok thought that it is a mitzvah to eat haroset. Accordingly, Rabbi Eliezer ben Tzadok would require us to recite a bracha of alachilat haroset, right? So you would say Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu haolam, tzivanu alachilat haroset. That actually existed. The Rambam, in turn, does not rule in accordance with Rabbi Elazar ben Tzadok, since in practice the Rambam observed that no one recites a bracha al haroset, meaning no one does this. I mean, where did this guy got it from, right? That's what Rambam is saying. In the Mishnah Torah, on the other hand, the Rambam believes that Rabbi Eliezer ben Tzadok does not understand the mitzvah of haroset to be one of eating haroset. Rather, the mitzvah is to have the haroset present on the Seder table to enhance the recounting of the exodus from Egypt and to be available for dipping. Hence, even according to Rabbi Eliezer ben Tzadok, we do not recite a bracha upon haroset since there is no maseh, specific concrete act of mitzvah performance associated with this mitzvah, other than its being present on the Seder table. Accordingly, since there is no common practice running counter to the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer ben Tzadok, the Rambam accepts this opinion as normative, as indicated in Masechet Pesachim in the Talmud. And that is why we have the haroset, but we do not recite a blessing. Okay? Meaning the Rambam understood that Rabbi Eliezer ben Tzadok really referred to the act of having the haroset represented because it's important for us to remember the mortar and the bricks and the apple, whatever you're remembering.
So it needs to be there.
It just needs to be there. You do not necessarily need to eat it.
But it's still a mitzvah.
Huh?
But it's still a mitzvah.
It is a mitzvah to have it represented,
Right.
but it's not a mitzvah to eat it. Okay? And that's why you don't recite a bracha, which is actually pretty unbelievable, right? Okay, this is what I picked up from Masechet Pesachim. Look, I also went up all the Mishnayot of the mice carrying hametz from one room to the next. I didn't want to put you through that, especially some of us like Larry and myself are suffering from PTSD from cleaning our houses. So we're not probably Joel too. We're not gonna and everybody here. So we're not gonna go over the mice running around with hametz. Let's turn to the Hadran, which is which is in the last page. It's a little modified. We abbreviated it a little bit. Hadran alach Masechet Pesachim ve'adrach halan. Datan alach Masechet Pesachim ve'datach halan. Lo nitnasei minach Masechet Pesachim ve'lo titnasei minan. Lo ba'alma adin ve'lo ba'alma da'ate. יהי רצון מלפניך אדוני אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו כשם שעזרתני לסיים מסכת פסחים, כן תעזרני להתחיל מסכתות וספרים אחרים ולסיימם, ללמוד וללמד, לשמור ולעשות, ולקיים את כל דברי תלמוד תורתך באהבה. וזכות כל התנאים והאמוראים ותלמידי חכמים יעמוד לי ולזערי שלא תמוש התורה מפי ומפי זרעי עד עולם, ותקיים בי. בתהלכך תנחה אותך ושבך תשמור עליך, בקצות אי תשליכך, כי בי ירבו ימיך, ויוסיפו לך שנות חיים, אורך ימים, בימינה ושמאלה, עושר וכבוד. אדוני עוז לעמו ייתן, Adonai Yevarech et amo v'shalom. May it be your will, Lord my God, just as you have helped us to complete Tractate Pesachim, so too may you help us to start other tractates and books and to complete them, to learn, to teach, to observe, and to enact, to fulfill all the words of the teaching of your Torah with love. And may the merit of all the Tanaim and Amoraim and Torah scholars be present for me and for my descendants, to ensure that the Torah does not depart from my mouth and from the mouths of my descendants for all eternity. And may the following be fulfilled for us. When we walk, it will lead you. When you lie down, it will watch over you. When you awake, it will speak to you. For through me your days will be multiplied, and the years of your life will be increased. Adonai Oslem Moiten, Adonai Yevarech et amo v'shalom. Let us please rise for Kaddish Rabbanan. יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה, ועלמא דברה חירותי וימליק מלכותי, וחייכון ויומכון וחיי לכל בית ישראל, בעגלה ובזמן קריב ואמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מבורך לעולם ולעולמי עלמיא. יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא, ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי לקודשה בריחו. לעילם עם כל ברכתה ושירתה, תושבחתה ונחמתה ואמירם בעולמה ואמרו אמן. על ישראל ועל רבנן ועל תלמידיהון ועל כל תלמידי תלמידיהון ועל כל מאן דעוסקים באורייתא ובאתרא קדישא הדין ודי בכל אתר ואתר. יהיה להון ולכון שלום הרבה, חינא וחיזא ורחמים, בחיים הניחין ומזוני רוויחי ופורקנה, מן קדם אבוהון דבשמיא וערא ואמרו אמן. יהא שלום הרבה מאיש שמיא, בחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן. חג שמח everyone. Go enjoy your last chametz and just don't eat it in your table. But have a wonderful Pesach. Really enjoy.